Good morning, Morai Rabotai, Bruchim Abayim. We are continuing on Masechet Rosh Hashanah, and we are on the bottom of the Kaf Chet, Amud Bet, the last line. Today's Amud is being learned. This is the Chur for Hashanah for Rachel Simcha Bad Nahid, Daniel Moshe Ben Farangis, Avraham. That should have Refuah Hashanah betoch Shar Cholei Yisrael. Amen. This Amud is also being learned. The Lilu Nishmat, Harav Moshe Yisrael Ben Harav Binyamin, Harav Ezra David Ben Harav Naftali Halevi. The Neshamot should have an aliyah. This month's learning of Amud Yomi has been graciously dedicated by the Shalikar family. Should be an ultimate zchut for the hatzlacha of their mishpacha. Amen. And the learnings of the community, this one has been dedicated by the Shei family. Should be a zchut for their mishpacha. Amen. So we got knee deep into the sugya of mitzvot tzrichot kavana, lo tzrichot kavana. We had Rava that said, seemingly, that mitzvot en tzrichot kavana, that when you do a mitzvah, that by itself is the kavana. And the Gemara asked multiple questions on Shitat Rava, the way we explained it, that seemingly mitzvot would need kavanah for you to be yotzim. And the last discussion that we had was the kasha that we asked from the Zrikat Tamim, the Mishnah Masechet Zvachim, versus the comparison with the Braita that the Gemara brought earlier. Rav Shimon bar Abba asked from a scenario of Birkat Kohanim, whether or not that is considered Kule Yom Azimne, is the entire day considered the time for Birkat Kohanim, is the entire day considered time for the Zrikat Dam Bechor. And the Gemara answered that even if you want to say that by the Zrikat Damim in Korbanot of the Beit HaMikdash, the whole day is open, because if they bring another Korban, the Kohen has to attend to it. But the Birkat Kohanim, the Kohen went to Duchen yet, that does not necessarily need to Duchen a second time. And yet you see that you have the issue of Baal Tosif. He can't just add his own thing. And the Gemara wanted to ask from there on the Shita of Rava. And then the Gemara said Rava's his own answer to this question was, depends on the timing. Now the Gemara says at the very end over here where we left off yesterday, 3 lines up from the bottom, Rava Amar latzet lo ba'i kavana, la'avor ba'i kavana. In order to be yotze mitzvah, if you did the mitzvah, you're yotze, you don't need specific kavana. But if you want to be adding to the mitzvah, to be over on a mitzvah, then you need to have a mindset that you're transgressing, you're sleeping in the sukkah on Shmini Atzeret. If it's just because your bed was there and it's more practical, fine, you're not yotzet, you're not necessarily over on Baal Tosif. But if you say, I hold that this generation needs more days of Sukkot, and hence I'm sleeping in the sukkah, then obviously you're going to be over on Baal Tosif. La'avor ba'i kavana. But the one says basically you can't say that either, because we just got finished saying the Mishnah in Masechet Zvachim of sprinkling the dam, the putting of the dam by Yesod HaMizbeach, that if you end up doing more than once by a korban that needs only once, you're over. Even if your kavanah is at all not to be over on the avera, you just want to be yotze, because the bloods got mixed of Bechor and, let's imagine, Korban Shlamim. Bechor needs only once, Shlamim needs 4 times, and the blood is 50-50 mixed. So you want to be just Yotze, the Shlamim part of it. You're not trying to transgress the mitzvah for Bechor, and yet the Mishnah said you're going to be over. So you see that you're not necessarily having any kavanah to transgress the Torah, and still is considered an avera of Baal Tosif. That's correct. I hear your question. The answer is Ela Amar Rava, the final answer of Rava, latzet lo ba'i kavana. To be yotze mitzvah, you don't need a specific kavanah. You blew shofar, first day of Tishrei, you did it correctly, you're yotze. Don't need any specific kavanah. You read Megillah, you didn't have any L'Shem Yichud, just read it correctly, happened to be on 14th or 15th of Adar, you're yotze the mitzvah. You don't need kavanah for mitzvot, says Rava. For avera, depends. If you're doing an avera, adding to the mitzvah, changing the tzura of the mitzvah at the time of the mitzvah itself, then you also will transgress it without any specific mindset. Like the mitzvah of the zrikat damim, of a bechor. We said the whole day is its time. So if you went and you sprinkled, you poured the blood once, and then you did another extra time, even without having any specific mindset of transgression, you are doing an avera. But if you did it not in its time, right, then you need kavara to be over an avera. Example, Shmini Atzeret. The Shmini Atzeret is no longer Chag HaSukkot. So if I end up sleeping in my bed because my bed was set up in the sukkah the day before, I had no specific mindset, just lazy and practicality, then you're good. You're not transgressing it. But if I go in the sukkah and say, I think we should be celebrating sukkah more days, then obviously you're going to be in transgression of that. Bizmano lo ba'i kavana. Shlo bizmano, if it's no longer the time, then ba'i kavana. Amar le Rabbi Zera l'shameh. Rabbi Zera told his shamash on Rosh Hashanah, Ikavin utkali, please have me in mind, have kavanah for me, and blow the shofar for me. Alma, you see from here, kasavar mashmiya by kavanah. You see from here that not only I need to have kavanah to be yotze, but you need to have kavanah to be motzi mi. Right? So says the Gemara, wait a second. Meitve, they asked from the Mishnah that we just had before, Haya over achore bet knesset, or shaya beto samuch lebet knesset. If you're passing by and behind the shul, or you live next to the shul and hearing the shofar being blown in the shul, if you had your mind on it, if you had kavanah, you're yotze. That's what the Mishnah said. O shaya beto samuch lebet knesset v'shama kol shofar o kol megillah im kiven libo yatza. The Mishnah makes it sound like it is completely dependent on me. If I had kavanah, I'm yotze. If I didn't have kavanah, I'm not yotze. Right? It says the Gemara, ve'im lav lo yatza v'chi kiven libo ma'eve. Who cares if you had kavanah to be yotze? The shaliach tzibur in the shul didn't have kavanah for you. He doesn't even know that you exist. He looks around the shul, and whoever is in the shul is in the shul. You're behind the shul. You're living next to the shul. He doesn't know that you're there listening to the shofar. The Baal Tokea, or the Baal Korah of the Megillah, he's not having kavanah for you. He doesn't even know you're there. So how can you be yotze? According to Rav Zera's story, telling his shamash, please have me in mind and blow shofar for me, it sounds like the Baal Tokea has to have you in mind. From this Mishnah, you see, the Baal Tokea doesn't necessarily have to even know that you exist. He's blowing the shofar, you're outside, you're yotze if you had kavanah. How about him? He doesn't have kavanah for you. Says the Gemara, no. You're right. It would have been a discrepancy, but here we're talking about a different case. Hacha, in the case of the Mishnah, who is blowing shofar in the shul? Not a private person. The shaliach tzibur, the set shaliach tzibur is blowing the shofar, whose job it is to have kavanah for everyone that's hearing him. Part of the Hilchot shaliach tzibur is you're doing chazarat hashas, you should have everyone in mind, right? You're doing any bracha that it's for the tzibur, you have to have everyone in mind. It's part of the halachot of shaliach tzibur, right? Part of it is, it has to be ratzui letzibur, he has to have a good voice, right? He should not be sending his kids to public school. Our Radia says if you are, the Shach Tzibur is pasul, right? Right? Shouldn't have, that used to be a box, now it's like a screen, right? At home, all those things are Chol Shach Tzibur, Shabbat, all those things. But also, he has to know, to be mechaven. It's part of the basic thing of Shach Tzibur, that whatever he does, he's the shaliach of the tzibur. He's the agent of the people. So he has to have everyone in mind in order for them to be able to do their obligations. The mindset of a shaliach tzibur is, I am everybody in mind. Anyone that's hearing me is included in my kavanah. Tashma, we learned, nitkaven shomea velo nitkaven mashmiya. A braita that we had is that if the one that hears the shofar had kavanah, but the one that's blowing the shofar didn't have kavanah, or the opposite, nitkaven mashmiya, the one that's blowing the shofar had kavanah, velo nitkaven shomea, the one that's hearing it didn't have kavanah, lo yatsa. In both of those scenarios, you're not yotze. Until both the person that's hearing it and the person who is blowing the shofar both have kavanah. And says the Gemara, Katani mashmiya dumiyad shomea. He compares the braita, the shomea to mashmiya, the one that's hearing to the one that's blowing the shofar. Ma shomea latzmo, just like shomea latzmo, he is hearing for himself. That's his kavanah. What's the kavanah of the person that's listening to the shofar? I want to hear shofar. Lishmoa kol shofar. That's the bracha we make, right? And the kavanah of the mashmiya also should be lishmoa kol shofar. It's the bracha that he says, right? So says the Gemara, this braita is comparing the shomea and the mashmiya together. Af mashmiya latzmo. The kavanah he has to have is to listen for himself. And there, the Mishnah, the Braita says, v'katani lo yatsa, that if you didn't have that kavanah, you're not yotze. But it's mashma that if you did have that kavanah, meaning if you had, as the Baal Tokea, you had kavanah to be yotze for yourself, and him, Reuben, had kavanah to be yotze for himself, right? So you and him had kavanah both to be yotze yourselves, and that's fine. Reuben gets to be yotze with your blowing of the shofar. It has nothing to do with me having kavanah for him. In other words, the Braita seems to suggest my kavanah has to be a proper kavanah of doing the mitzvah. As long as I have the kavanah to do the mitzvah, and you had kavanah to do your mitzvah through my mitzvah, that we're good to go. I don't have to have any altruistic kavanah that I am mechaven for him. As long as I'm doing the mitzvah and you have me in mind, then you're good to go. It seems from the Braita. And that's against Reb Zera, obviously, right? It's a Braita against one of the Amoraim, which is a big problem.
Against Robert, right?
Against Reb Zera too. Reb Zera told his Shamash, right? What did Reb Zera tell his Shamash? Have me in mind and blow shofar for me. I don't need you to have me in mind to blow shofar. Have yourself in mind and blow shofar, and I'll have in mind, I'll be yotze. Rav Zera clearly indicated that the mashmiya, the Baal Tokea, the one who blows shofar, needs to have every person who's hearing in mind. And this practice seems like, no. So long as the guy had himself in mind, he has kavanah, I'm doing the mitzvah deoraita of shofar on first day of Tishrei, and here I am blowing shofar. Even if he didn't know Reuben exists behind the shul, right? Going back to that Mishnah, very clearly is mashma that you're yotze without having even a knowledge of the person's listening. Certainly you don't need to have them in mind. So that's like a big punch to Rav Zera. Rav Zera is an Amora. This is a Braita. Much as you're correct. The Braita is muchach, not like Rav Zera.
but still it's fine. Rabbi Zera is safe. Why? Because Tanai, it's Machloket Tanai. The Braita is only one opinion of the Tanai. The Tanya, I'll show you this two opinions in a Braita, in a different Braita. The Tanya, the Braita says Machloket Tarakama and Rabbi Yossi. Tarakama holds Shomea La'atzmo Mashmi'a Lefi Darko. The person who is hearing the shofar, he hears it for himself. He has to have kavanah to be yotze, obviously. Mashmi'a lefi darko. Right? He also has to be the derech of blowing shofar. He has his own sake in mind. Right? Shomea mashmi'a, he does the regular. Right? He doesn't have to have a specific kavanah. You don't have to go make up, say, please have me in mind. Right? Here's the darko he does. Obviously, he has a kavanah for doing the mitzvah of the Torah, but that's good enough. That's sufficient. So says the Gemara. The Braita continues. Amar Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi disagrees with this Tarakama and says Rabbi Yossi. That's only with regards to Shaliach Tzibur, whose job it is to have everyone in general in mind. So if he has to have everyone in general in mind, you don't have to go to him and say, please have me in mind. He doesn't have to know that you're even existing there. You could be hiding in a closet inside the shul and you'll be yotze, right? So says the Gemara, but beyachid, a personal blowing of shofar, like case of Rabbi Zera talking to his student, who's not a shaliach tzibur, right? There, he has to actually do a private blowing of a shofar. Imagine this happens. A lot of people, tzaddikim, they walk around on Rosh Hashanah, they spend their Rosh Hashanah afternoon after a long tefillah, instead of going to take a nap or going to eat an elaborate suda, they quickly eat something and run around the streets, making sure, to old age homes, to people who don't have the capability of walking to shul, and so on and so forth. You have caregivers and whatnot. They ask their addresses from the caregivers and so on, and they go to their homes blowing shofar for them, right? So if you're one of those cases and you're blowing shofar for the person, you have them in mind. You're not shaliach tzibur at that moment, right? You're not thinking, well, maybe their next door neighbor also is a Jew and he's listening. You don't have that in mind. If they want to, they have to ask you to have them in mind. And that is the case of Rabbi Zera says, then you need actually for the shomea to have kavanah, for the mashmiya to have kavanah, and that's that. By the way, there's a whole machloket between Mishnah Berurah and Aruch HaShulchan. Who says the bracha? If I was yotze t'kiyat shofar, and I'm going now to blow for other people to be yotze, who says the bracha? Can I say the bracha for them? Or do they say the bracha for themselves? Right? It's their mitzvah. Now, I could technically say bracha for another person because of the mitzvah of arvut. Because Israel arevim ze baseh, right? That means, if I did my mitzvah, this is a fascinating thought process. If you think about it, the achdut of Am Yisrael on a completely different level. Because, especially for Sfaradim, we pass like the Rambam, Shulchan Aruch passes like Rambam, Siman Kuf Tet, that saying a bracha that's unnecessary is a transgression of the third of the Aseret HaDibrot, Lo Tisah et Shem Hashem Elokecha Lashon. The Ashkenazim follow like the Rosh and the Tosafot, who paskin that if you mention Hashem's name in context of blessing, of praise, even if it was an unnecessary bracha, you are doing an Averah, but Averah on a Drabanan level. Not at the Oraita level, right? Because at the end of the day, you're saying Shakol Niya Bidvaro. You just said 2 seconds ago Shakol. You're saying it again. What are you saying? It's thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You're praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a Avera Darabara, not the Oraita, right? But according to Shulchan Aruch, it's a full-fledged Deoraita. So I just said Kiddush Friday night. 3 seconds later, someone walks in, right? It was a Persian guest that came late. So now, can I say Kiddush again for him? He doesn't know how to say Kiddush. So I have to go through the whole thing, say after me, Baruch.
Or can I just pick up the course and fill it up and say another Kiddush? But I just said it. I literally just said it 3 seconds ago. He can still do it. Why? Because he didn't do his mitzvah. So what do I care? Oh, because if he didn't do his mitzvah, you haven't finished your mitzvah yet. So you could say Kiddush for him. Otherwise, how can I say Kiddush? I can say Kiddush for you. You have to say it to yourself. What makes it mutar for me to say Kiddush again? Because I didn't do it, but I did do a mitzvah, but I didn't. I did. You did, but he didn't, and it's part of 600,000 neshamot of Am Yisrael. You did only 1/600,000th of your mitzvah by saying the mitzvah for yourself. You are obligated to see to it that other Yidden also do it, right? So that's a concept, a halachic concept of arvut. Of course, Israel Arabim Zabazim. So I could be blowing shofar for you, but who says the bracha? I could say the bracha, but the chatchila, should you or should you not? So Rabbi Yisrael Reisman, Shlita, Shishva Travadat, one of the poskim of America nowadays, one of the Rosh Yeshivot of America, and he's known for his massive Motzei Shabbat shiurim. That I back in 20 years ago when I knew about it, there were like 1,300 people going on Motzei Shabbat to hear it. It's a tremendous personality. So he said once, hilarious. He said he was a bacher and he would do this. He would go to help elderly people to be Yotzei Shofar. It's a achrayut. The Klal has to take achrayut for other people. So I went to this woman, elderly woman, and I said I followed the opinion of saying the bracha for them. So I said the bracha, right, the Shema Kol Shofar, and I blew a whole set of tekiyot for her. And after I was done, as I'm saying bye, she says, "Thank you so much. You were much better than the previous guy." He's like, "What previous guy?" I said, "Yeah, like half an hour ago, another person came and blew for me, but you were much better." He's like, "Wait a second. I can't do this anymore." I said, "I changed my minhag afterwards. From there on, I had them say the bracha because I didn't know she was yotze already. She's yotze. Then my bracha becomes a bracha shen sricha, right? Right? But if you have them themselves make bracha, at least they're taking the fall themselves. But nevertheless, that's a cute story of shomea umashmiya. But if you have that type of scenario, that type of setup, that you're privately doing it for someone else, it's not a shaliach tzibur that has a general mindset for everyone, then, taka, if someone is listening from the next room, they would need to ask you, like Rabbi Zera did, said, "You're blowing shofar, you're going to have me in mind as well." So,
Rabbi Yossi in the Brisa doesn't look like he's cholek, he's just clarifying the previous position. In my Gemara Memoriam, he's saying, that's speaking about a public tzibur versus but for the Yachid, it's different. He's not necessarily cholek. Isn't he just clarifying?
Well, the Mishnah is presenting it as a machloket, right? Tanai, the Gemara says the Tarakama holds Shomea Umashmiya, right? Amar Rabbi Yossi, which is always a comment. There's difference between Amar Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yossi Omer, but nevertheless, here is pretty clear that he's saying, well, that's only for a shaliach tzibur. The Tarakama does not differentiate between shaliach tzibur and non-shaliach tzibur. So the Gemara says, well, the difference, even though that's subtle, the difference between Rabbi Yossi and Tarakama is exactly our case, our scenario. Rabbi Zera's case is exactly the nafkamina between Rabbi Yossi and Tarakama, and therefore it's not that Rabbi Zera is up against a Mishnah, even though that I showed you that the Tanaik work, the Braita that we brought earlier, is clearly not like Rabbi Yossi, because there he holds that ma shomea le'atzmo af mashmiya le'atzmo, but over here you have a shita of Rabbi Yossi who says that's only for shaliach tzibur that has a general kavanah, but a regular citizen who is trying to blow shofar actually needs to have you in mind. If he's doing it for himself, then you have to ask them to have you in mind as well.
I see a little bet there taken to the Ein Mishpat. Says that we seem to paskin mitzvah shritu kavana.
Yes. So we do paskin. It's a massive machloket, and again, I'm still waiting to come to a proper time for a discussion in halacha. And this is a massive machloket, like one of those like larger than life concepts in Shas that comes up all over the place. And some differentiate between mitzvot that have action attached to them in a way that you would have never done that act without having a mindset of mitzvah. For instance, you wrap tefillin, right? You wrap tefillin, no one goes in and puts black boxes and packs straps around their head and around their arms, just for no reason, right? So you're clearly doing a maaseh mitzvah, right? It's not like sitting in the sukkah that it could be a nice, beautiful day and you're sitting outdoors to eat. That would be, the eating is normal thing. Eating in the sukkah is the mitzvah that you have to have kavanah. But wrapping tefillin is a very obvious action. There are those who make such a chiluk, but the maaseh we paskin, la halacha, because there's a massive machloket, and again, we'll get to the crux of this in a rate bite. But there's a massive machloket, a poskim, whether mitzvot tzrichot kavanah or not, we paskin that at the very least by mitzvot deoraita, mitzvot tzrichot kavanah. If you didn't, we paskin kavanah, but by drabarans, you have more leeway. If you didn't have kavanah, you have more leeway. But by deoraita, if you didn't have kavanah for the mitzvah, then you taka or not yotze the mitzvah. You taka not yotze the mitzvah if you didn't have kavanah for a mitzvah deoraita, because we paskin mitzvot tzrichot kavanah. Now this obviously lends itself to a larger discussion of what exactly is considered the minimum kavanah that I have to have in order to be yotze, and the whole saga of L'Shem Yichuds that the Noda Yehuda, Rabbi Chazkel Landau, famously was very, very against it. Actually, the Ben Ish Chai, in the beginning of his sefer, when he speaks about the importance of having proper mindset, he says, even though that there are those who push this away, and he's referring to the Noda Yehuda, says, L'Maseh, it's a very important concept to have mindset of the mitzvot, because there is an accomplishment of the mitzvah that's done only in your mind. That even two people who did the mitzvah, and they're yelled to the mitzvah, let's call it, right? But one of them had a proper mindset, and his mind was ready to do the mitzvah, Hashem yichud, and so on. With another one that just said did the mitzvah, obviously the one that did the mitzvah in a proper way, connecting with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in that way, and his mind is, in the higher worlds, obviously his mitzvah is a higher level as well. There's Yeshaya Navi actually says something very powerful. There's one place in Tanakh that a very extreme language of negativity is mentioned, and you don't find it anywhere else. It's just, even in the parasha of Kilalot in Chumash Dvarim, it says, Vayeret, in Echai it says Vayeret Pelaim, he went down, Klal Yisrael went down in an unbelievable way. Pelaim, Pele, right? And in Chumash Dvarim, Parashat Kitavo also has one language of wonder for the negativity that Hashem brings. There's one place in Tanakh that a double language of wonder for in a negative way is mentioned. It says, "V'irbeti et makot ha'am hazeh hafle v'afele." Hashem says, "I will increase the negativity, the infliction of this nation in a super duper unbelievable way." Hafle v'afele, a double language of pele, wonder. Like people will go crazy of how bad it's going to be, right? So you wonder to yourself, what did they do wrong that such a language, such a strong language is mentioned? What did they do wrong?
What were they doing worse than the klalot of kitavo? Worse than what it says, by echa. So you read the psukim prior. It says like this: Yan. This is going to come as a shocker, right? It says Yan ki nigash ha'am hazeh elai bepiv, because this nation comes close to me with their mouth. Ubisfatav ki beduni, literally translated with their lip service, they respect me. Velibo, but their heart, rachak mimeni, far away from me. Vehaya yiratam oti, and their fear of me. That means they are fearing Hashem. They are doing the mitzvot, right? Nigasha amazeh elai. They're coming close to me. They're doing shul. They're coming to whatever it is that people Jews do, right? They give tzedakah. They come to Amud Yomi. They do their things. Their fear of me is mitzvat anashim melumada. It's a robotic, mechanical, out of rote doing of the mitzvot. Right? That is ground, says the pasuk, for, it says, I'll take their chachamim away. Right? It's pretty, graphic what it says over there. It's going to happen. Why? Because you're mindless. You're doing things mindlessly. You're robotic. You walk the walk. You talk the talk, and you do the things, but the heart is not necessarily there. It becomes a difficult thing. Again, I didn't intend to go into this to this route right now, but this is something that we have to discuss in the next shiur when we talk about the rate bite of mitzvot tzrichot kavana. Chazak Baruch.